If you're a Sun Devil fan by now, you definitely recognize this guy's singing voice, and you also remember him from ASU's legendary 1996 team. But today, we're going to get to know the man himself and his story. Before we get into it, a huge shout out to our awesome sponsor, DeFalco's Deli, at 2334 North Scottsdale Road in Scottsdale, and online at defalcosdeli.com. And a big thank you to our guys at All AZ Sports for hooking us up with these videos we're able to bring to you. So with no further delay, let's bring him in. My guy, Gus Farwell. How you doing, buddy? All the way from Barcelona.
Very well, thank you. It is great to be here. Real honor to be on this podcast. I'm a big fan. Thank you guys for everything that you do. It's a fantastic thing for me to listen to you guys all the way out here in Spain, and you guys keep me feeling close to the program, and I really appreciate it. So thanks for that. But how are you guys doing?
Doing great, and obviously very much appreciate your taking some time out to talk some Sun Devil football and your story as well. So let's start off going back to the beginning. Coming out of high school in California, you're a very accomplished quarterback, even beating out some guy named Tom Brady, I think that's his name, for some honors. Why was Arizona State the right place for you to continue playing college ball?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brad. Can you repeat that name? Who is that? I don't know who that guy is.
According to my notes, it's Tom something.
Yeah, Tom something or other. No, so yeah, coming out my senior year, I had a strange football journey. I really only started as quarterback my senior year. I played outside linebacker my junior year, of all things. I was looking at Oregon and UCLA, heavily recruited by both those schools, but then UCLA went McNown and Oregon went with Justin Wilcox, and I was kind of left without a school. I actually really wasn't that heavily recruited by ASU. And so I kind of went to ASU and, talked to the coach. So I said, hey, I'm interested in coming here. And they said, yeah, great. We'd love to have you. And it also helped as well. They have a great theater program. I was into theater at the time. Big shock. But yeah, so it was those two things. I fell in love with the school when I went to a game when Oregon, my brother was playing the night game at Sun Devil Stadium. Monsoon came in, it's nice warm rain, and I just fell in love with the place underneath the lights. And so then made the decision to come on out, and my God, thank God I did.
So for those who don't know your story, how'd you go from a quarterback playing with Jake Plummer at ASU to an opera singer living in Barcelona?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. In a nutshell, I heard opera for the first time at a party late night at a friend's house in high school. I borrowed the CD. The parent CDs came around in the 6-disc CD. The room basically melted away, and I just asked, "What is this music?" And then really just fell in love with opera. And I drove around in high school, time in Tempe, just blasting opera in my Jeep. And Jake had to suffer through a lot of it as my roommate. I'm sitting in my room with my door closed and singing, Phantom of the Opera and all sorts of stuff. And then really, actually, the first time I ever sang in public opera was at the Rose Bowl and at Universal Studios at the talent show. It was a Wednesday practice. Bruce Snyder says to the team, he says, hey, tomorrow there's a talent show, and, I don't know if you guys are interested, but if you want to do something, go on ahead. And so, my 19-year-old brain started going to work, and I'm there on the bus, and I've got the CD pamphlet there, and I'm reading the lyrics in Italian. And then I go up the next day and sing which is one of the most difficult pieces in the opera repertoire. Only a 19-year-old idiot could try and do that. But it's pretty funny. I started singing, and everybody just started laughing. I've got the whole ASU team, the whole Ohio State team there, and then all of a sudden it just went dead quiet. And I sang that. So, and then kind of went on after I left ASU and I went to Europe, and I met my wife, and my wife heard me sing. It was just kind of a party trick, for a very long time. Still is a party trick. It's a nice thing to just pull out every once in a while. It certainly was a lot of fun during the Legends Luncheon weekend to just do the Go Devils Go every once in a while. And, Vince Amy used to make me do the scene from Ace Ventura anytime there was a party and there was a sliding glass window or a sliding glass door. He'd always make stop the entire party and be like, Gus, hey, And then next thing you know, I'm sitting there going, anyway, that's double pane soundproof glass. He'd make me do the entire scene. So anyway, that was a party trick. And then I went to Europe, met my wife, and then she heard me sing. She goes, okay, that's not normal, and you really need to do something with this. And at that point, I had no idea what to do. And then it's been the journey ever since.
So in the spring of 2020, when the world was really first impacted by the COVID pandemic, you spent a lot of time serenading your neighborhood from your balcony, several videos that were shared across the globe of you doing that. What made you come up with that idea, and how did it feel to get the reactions that you received?
It really wasn't an idea to just like it wasn't planned at all. It was really just something that happened. It basically happened this one night. So when we went into lockdown, and we were under the worst lockdown in the Western world, to my knowledge, like my kids didn't go outside for 45 straight days. They didn't go outside of our building. You couldn't go outside to exercise. My wife got told off for being 2 blocks away from the house, for walking the dog. And, the cops are like, no, you're too far away from your house. And so it was pretty intense. But that first night, there was this real kind of feeling of community around. We live of the city, and, normally, you can see people out on the balconies and things, but nobody really acknowledges each other. And then that night, it was 8 p.m. It was announced that everybody would come out onto their balconies and would clap for all of the medical workers and everything else. So what ended up happening is that first night, I probably may or may not have had some wine. I have no recollection. Senator, it was really emotional, and we're all outside clapping, and then an ambulance came by, and the sirens were blaring, and everybody was out on their balconies, and everybody cheered, and I completely moment, and I sang out like the last couple of notes of Nessun Dorma, and everybody went nuts for it. And so, but I just thought that was it. And then the next day, my wife says to me, she's like, why don't you actually sing a song? Why don't you sing something? And I said, no, I don't want this to be about me. And she goes, it's not about you. It's about them. Like, give them something, And so I really just said, okay. So I went out and I sang the first verse of a song and just hit the high note at the end. I didn't really think anybody would care. And then everybody went nuts, and they all started chanting, otra, another. And it really caught me like off guard and unawares. I was like, oh, okay. And then, so the next night I sang this terrible, very classical song, and it was like a golf clap. It was just like I had let everybody down. And the next night, I was laying in bed and in the dark and just going like, wow, man, I really let everybody down. My dad always used to use this expression, to give them both barrels. And I'm like, I'm going to give them both barrels tomorrow. And I completely deconstructed my entire entertainment system, moved it out onto my balcony, and played a backing track, and then sang Nessun Dorma, which is that everybody loves, the big aria that Pavarotti was famous for. And then my then at the time 11-year-old daughter filmed it from the other balcony, posted it, and then it just went nuts from there. And then it just became this thing that I sang every single night, and I sang for 65 straight nights during lockdown. And then it just kind of went viral and on its own thing. And then on the finale, which was crazy, it ended up on Good Morning America. Don't know how.
So a little bit earlier, you mentioned singing the Go Devils Go across Legends Luncheon weekend. So tell us the story behind that. Of course, folks who attend games at Sun Devil Stadium, they're hearing your voice there every week. How did it all come together for you to be a part of that?
So it really was all Gary Knudsen. He contacted me. He knew that I was a singer. He played, I believe, on the 86 team. And there was this long-standing tradition of a gentleman who would sing this, especially I think at Sun Devil at the baseball stadium, and so Gary just contacted me and said, "Hey, I want to bring this tradition back, and would you be interested in doing it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, absolutely." And so I went to this little studio in LA. And just recorded a couple of them, sent it to him. Thought absolutely nothing would come of it. And then all of a sudden I'm watching the game and I just hear this, go Devils, go. And so it's just a really cool thing that really was all Gary's doing. And again, I'm just lucky to be a part of it.
So a few weeks ago, of course, you were in Tempe for that Legends Luncheon to celebrate your 1996 team, and you sang the national anthem prior to that Washington State game. What was that whole weekend like for you to be back around your teammates, your brothers, and also to get on the field to sing the national anthem?
Man, what a time. I always say that we win the national championship every year just because we get to come back to Tempe. I mean, to come back and late October and just have this beautiful weather and get to go out and seeing those guys, there's nothing like it. It is one of the most special things that just to be a part of that group. And it truly is a Sun Devil brotherhood. I mean, the love that we have for each other and just that camaraderie, it's like nothing else. And, I had to behave myself because I had to sing. So that was good. That probably kept me in check, but in fact, I ghosted everybody on the Friday night before the game because I was just like, I can't do this. It's too much on my voice. The worst thing in the world is to be in a bar and speaking loudly before you have to sing. So that was great. And then to go out and do the national anthem, it's always such an honor. The player, I used to cry pretty much every time during the national anthem. My dad served in the military in Vietnam. So it was always a very special thing to me. And, some people ask, like, why didn't you do a Go Devils Go, like right after the anthem? And I'm just like, no, it's too sacred to me. I can't, it's a real responsibility to do it, and, but it was fantastic. And then to go out that night afterwards, I mean, I was one of the fans of the early kickoff, because that allowed me to have some fun after the game, but what an incredible time. And the Alumni Association putting on that incredible luncheon. I mean, talk about emotion, and I'm being emotional, just like the video clips that they played and Joe, your dad, Tim doing all the announcing for it. And then, Jake got up and he spoke, and then Juan Roque gave a huge emotional speech. And it's really special, as the years keep passing. Look, we don't want to be the last team that went to the Rose Bowl. We are very much want someone else, we're not like the 72 Dolphins or whatever that like gain every time, the last undefeated team loses. I always think that's ridiculous. We want the next Rose Bowl team. We want the next undefeated team. We want the national champions. But that being said, it is really special. And you realize, with each passing year, just how special it was. I've actually really gone back and watched a few of the games, and we were a good football team.
So on that exact note, of course, that 96 season was unforgettable for everybody on the team and anybody who watched them play. What are some of your favorite memories from that season?
Wow. I like to say that, as a backup and being Jake's roommate, I like to say that I had a front row seat to the most incredible season you can think of. And it just was really special. I think of the Washington game, the first game of the year, and that almost last second field goal by Robert Neese to win that game. We could have lost that game. Jake drove us down the field, looking across in the fourth quarter and seeing UW sitting there with the cool zones on them. And I think it was like 90 plus degrees on that field on that game's first game of the season. And I remember looking at like fourth quarter, looking across and seeing them in the cool zones and going, we got these guys. We can get them. And then, you fast forward to the night before the Nebraska game, and people know about the famous night when we had the players meetings and there were no coaches, and the famous speech that, we ended up, people were flipping tables and things like that. And, the speech of, even our own coaches, even our own family members don't think that we can go out and win this game tomorrow. And we got all riled up, and, people, as we're going back to our rooms, going, remember this feeling tomorrow, remember it, and then going in on the buses and looking around and just seeing a sea of red and just going, man, when Lincoln, like, where are we? And, and then that 19-0 and watching Tom Osborne eat 3 timeouts for a shutout, let the clock run, which I thought was one of the classiest moves I've ever seen. Actually, he just knew that he was beat, and he's like, we're out of here. The comeback at UCLA, the double overtime against USC, and then clinching the Rose Bowl against Cal, and then even after all that was done, business was not finished. We had to go down there and play them, the red, blue, and who, as I like to say, and that was a fun game.
So looking at the clocks here, you're 8 hours ahead of us for those of us here in Tempe, which on a Monday morning, it's a little bit before 9 a.m. now. A lot of folks would be jealous that it's pushing the end of the workday for folks over there. I think a lot of folks would like to trade with you. But what do you do to keep up with ASU sports, especially since most football games are kicking off around like 3 or 4 a.m. your time over there?
It's tough. It is. But I mean, getting up at 4:30 in the morning to watch this last game, I mean, that would have been tough watching at any time during the day. But getting up at 4:30 in the morning and having to drink coffee, you start thinking about putting things in your coffee when games go. But I really, and not just sort of, blowing smoke here. It's you guys, man. I love this podcast. I love listening to you guys. You really keep me up to date. And, and then there's, I talk to a lot of, ex players. Kyle Murphy and I are always texting during the game. And the Sun Devil Summits are fantastic. All of the things that everybody puts in from the university, it's really incredible. It just really makes you feel, I mean, thank goodness for the internet and video calls and everything else. It's actually, I really feel like I'm a part of the Sun Devil community again.
All right, so let's talk some football this season. Obviously, as a quarterback, you have a unique eye for the game. ASU's passing game has not gone well this year. They have a talented quarterback, some talented receivers, good offensive line, but still the results just haven't been there. In your view, why has the passing game struggled so much this year?
Man, it's I think it's simple and complex. Neil's a very, very talented quarterback, and I mean, he is. I think he could still do something very special. I think it's a combination of things. I think the false starts and the by the offensive line, and I'm the first person that will compliment the offensive line, but the offensive line has really struggled this year. Jaden has 19 sacks, I believe, somewhere around there, which is pretty. That's a lot for a mobile quarterback, and that's helped. I think that's put him in positions where he's had to do things with his arm that he's probably not all that comfortable with. But really, for me, it comes down to I just think that he has an accuracy issue at this moment. I just, and I don't know what that is, because sometimes he makes throws and I'm just like, wow, I really just go, he's got an amazing arm and he just makes some amazing throws, but then it's just can be inconsistent. And I think that's one of the things that he's going to have to work on in the off season, is really just go back to fundamentals and work his throwing mechanics. And sometimes it's just sometimes it's just shifting of a grip, or, sometimes it can just be footwork. But it's not something that's just a quick fix. It's something that's going to have to be worked in the off season with somebody specific. You can't just go like on a Wednesday practice, like, hey, let's go just take another 20 throwing reps and, we fix the accuracy issue. Because I think, from a decision-making standpoint, his freshman year, 2019, he obviously, what you would want a freshman quarterback to do. He did not make mistakes. 2 picks in the entire year. And he was surrounded. I went back and watched the Michigan State game and the Oregon game, and he had, Ayuk and Frank Darby and Benjamin. I mean, that team was pretty loaded. And as far as receivers were concerned, I noticed back then they were keeping throws short for him. Yes, we will remember some of the downfield shots that he took, but you can just throw that ball up and go let Brandon Ayuk go and run that thing down, like he did a couple of times against Oregon. But one of my camps there was Bill Walsh, the famous coach of 49ers. I know who you guys that who he is, but Bill Walsh said something to me that always stuck with me, which was 80% of Joe Montana's passes were under 15. 80%. But 80% of Joe yards came after the catch. And which I found to be astonishing, really. You think as a quarterback, you're like, oh, I'm going to just chuck this ball downfield and win all the yards with the ball in the air, but that's just not how it is. And I think what's letting Jaden down, and I think he would be the first to admit this, is that he's not putting the ball where he wants it. And look, he leads the Pac-12 in completion percentage, which if you would have told me that before I actually looked it up, I would have said no way. But he does. I think he's got a 66% completion percentage. Jake only had a 57%. So he's got a better completion percentage than Jake did. But one of the things that Jake could do, Jake was a hyper accurate quarterback. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks I've ever seen. And what Jake could do when he, as a quarterback, when things are working for you, you're putting the ball, let's say a curl route, ball on the shoulder. A receiver knows that when he gets that ball on his left shoulder, that's the way he's supposed to turn because the cornerback's coming from the right side, and right now I just don't see Jaden really putting those balls, letting guys going to do what they do best after the catch. I think of that. I think it was probably towards the end of the fourth quarter against Oregon State. You had that brilliant play where they had White coming out of the backfield up the sideline, and he just had, Zach Hill brilliantly designed that play to, you're constantly looking to create mismatches, and he got the mismatch that he wanted, and he got White coming out of the backfield sort of right. It wasn't really an out and up, but more just sort of a streak, just straight out of the. That linebacker was nowhere near White. Ball came up short, and White kind of had to turn around to catch the ball, and he just fell down. The linebacker didn't even touch him. If that ball's out where ball to be, White waltzes into the end zone, and then we're up 7 at that point. Instead we the offense sputters, and then we miss so it's tough, and really the way the run game is going right now, that should open things up for the passing game, and a lot has been made about the receivers. And yes, I know I've watched the games, I've seen the drop balls and things, and it's, we don't have that star receiver. We don't have any receiver in the top 10 of the Pac-12 in receiving yards. But interestingly, I find we've got 4 guys from number 14 down to 25, which I, and White is included in that. And I think that's a but yeah, it's a tough fix. It's there. I think Jaden, his legs, I think moving, and that's the other thing I think I'd like to see him do in the off season is put on a couple LBs, hit the weight room, put on a couple pounds, just because I'd actually like to see him run the ball more. I'd like to see him pull it down. We see him handing off to White. He always it's almost like he's doing some sort of a read option, but he very rarely ever pulls the ball down. Oregon State, the outside linebacker, the backside linebacker was basically lineman was really crushing down, and because Jaden never pulled the ball out, and he kind of does that fake run. He hands the ball off and then he runs towards the line of scrimmage. I'd like to see him keep it more. I'd like to see him, I think during it was either Washington or USC, he almost had as many rushing attempts as he did passing attempts or completions. And I think that's actually, I'd like to see more of that on, I just don't think he's a 30 pass, 30 attempts. Maybe around 15 to 20 attempts, but also running, because he's so dangerous. He's so special when he gets out in the open field. I sit up every time he gets into the open field, just want to see what he's going to do. He's a special guy, and he's got a lot to do. I think left New Jersey.
So since Jaden has struggled the past few games, especially as a passer, if you're Zach Hill, if you're Herm Edwards, what would your advice be to him? Whether it's, you mentioned some of the things you'd suggest from like a technical perspective, and maybe even just, mentally and psychologically, what's the advice to hope that he ends this season on a high note?
I'd say take what they give you. Take what they give you. Don't try to win. He doesn't need to win the game. He doesn't need to force the ball down the field. And I'm not saying that's what he's doing, but I like, if I'm Zach Hill, I'm saying, listen, our guy, you know what you're doing. Just defense is giving you, take the short throws, let the guys, you don't have, the Ayuks, the Jalen Strongs, but you do have guys coming out of the backfield. You've got Whites, you've got Pearsall, you've got, hopefully Hodges will be back. Just take your time, take what is given to you, keep it simple, and don't be afraid to run. Some people have leveled criticism at him that, he's pulling the ball down too fast. He's looking to run. He's not keeping his eyes down field long enough. And I get that. But when he does run, he causes problems, and, that's really what I think that he just needs to do. Is just like, listen, go back to basics, just go through your reads, but really just try and take what the defense is giving to you.
Now, when you look at Jaden's skill set and then the offensive scheme that coordinator Zach Hill has implemented, do you think that Jaden's a good fit in this system?
I do. I don't know that Zach Hill is necessarily doing exactly what he wants at this point, because the run game is so strong, and we're struggling, in the passing. It is what it is. And quite frankly, I remember your guys' reports coming out of camp. Brad, I remember reading some of your articles early on in camp, kind of going, okay, so strong, when's the offense going to get going here? So this isn't a new thing. This has kind of been since camp. Look, Jaden, I think that Jaden is a offensive coordinator's dream. I mean, he gives you so many different options with his legs, the way that he can hurt you. Maybe they're asking him to be more of a drop back. No, he doesn't. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, but I just don't see him really, he's not out of the pocket a lot, a lot of the times he's dead in the pocket and then may come up and scramble late after, but I'd like to see him move out of the pocket a little bit. And where, when he gets out there, believe me, all those defenders, from the cornerbacks to the safeties to the linebackers, are all going to just panic as soon as he gets out in the open. But again, Zach Hill knows what he's doing. He's a very, very clever coach. And I think he is a good fit. I think that he will continue to get better. One of the things that people forget about a lot is that Jake had 3 tough years. His junior, we were 6-5. I think one of the most important games in ASU history was that loss to U of them in Tempe at the end of the 95 season. And that left a very bad taste in our mouth. And I think one of the other things that will benefit Jaden and some of the other players as well is sort of maybe when this sort of very senior group moves on, and they've been a credit to the university, and they're very passionate, but sometimes a team just needs a shift in leadership. It just changes the feeling around the program. There were a lot of very strong leaders in that 95 team, but when they left, it allowed the younger guys to kind of come through, and it was a completely different dynamic in that team in 96. And maybe that happens this offseason. I don't know. You've got a lot of great players that you'd want on the field, that you want in your locker room. But sometimes maybe when they move on, maybe it will allow some other guys to kind of step up in a leadership role and get a little bit more vocal and kind of grow into themselves a little bit.
Speaking of leadership, Jaden's come under fire from some folks out there about his leadership style. He's a guy who's rather calm, cool, collected, not a very fiery type. But do you think a quarterback has to be that kind of, very vocal, in your face, rally up type, or can a more, subdued demeanor work?
It's a tough one. I was pretty vocal. I often compare, people say like, opera and football. And I said, look, like, how can you even talk about the two in the same sentence? But, they're more similar than you think, because you're not really you when you go out onto that field. When I used to go out on that field, I would just become demanding and I would become very vocal. And, here I'm a very relaxed kind of guy. I don't get upset about much, but when you get me in a competitive environment, I'm very vocal. Jake was certainly vocal. Jake was one of the most intense people, especially when competition was on the line. We used to have Yahtzee tournaments. We used to play stickball inside our living room with a rolled up thing of tape and broomstick. And those were competitive games, man. Like, it was nuts. But Jaden's got his own style. I don't. It just depends. It's not just about him, though. It's about the other players around him. Yes, does he need to lead? He has to lead, because as a quarterback, you just have to. The plays are coming in. They're coming. Everything's coming through your mouth. Everybody's looking at you in that huddle. But a lot of it comes down to just like respect and trust. And I'm sure his respect and trust him in that huddle, and maybe it's just his style. I don't think that, I remember a couple times early on in the season, I'm like, that's kind of a weird reaction to something that happened on the field. But then again, the more I watch, that's just kind of how he is. And I don't think if that's how he is, if he's more of a relaxed kind of guy, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. That can work for you. You make a mistake, you go like, okay, well, father, when I'm looking at my kids, if they make a mistake and they start getting super down on themselves, I'm telling them like, hey, relax. It's no big deal. Just worry about the next one. And that can work for Jaden. I think he can embrace that side of it, of that things don't seemingly on the outside, because of course we're just watching from the outside. They don't seem to bother him that much when things don't go well. And I'm sure some people will be like, well, that's the problem. But I don't see it that way. I think that can actually work to his, he's cool, calm, and collected. But yeah, and then, I saw him yelling at his lineman against Oregon State. He was giving him an earful when they were, jumping off sides a couple times. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay. Good. I like that. But I think he'll grow into himself. He's still a young guy. What is he, like 19, 20? We forget he came in and had a lot of pressure put on him early. Has a lot of expectation. I've heard even the words Heisman Trophy and Jaden Daniels said in the same sentence. Like, Wow. But he's under a lot of pressure. Yes, you have to rise to the pressure, but I think he'll come good. I really do.
So we all know what's ahead this weekend. Territorial Cup showdown this Saturday. That team from down south coming up to the wonderful Tempe, so they get to experience the good life for at least a couple of days before they got to go back down to that misery down there. You're in the program, as you mentioned, of course, for one of the more satisfying wins that ASU has had in the history of the rivalry. What memories stand out most for you playing that team from that city down south?
Well, I lived before, that 95 game, which left a bad mouth and really drove us through the off season to go and have that amazing season in 96. But, it's such a special rivalry. Yes, we can actually call this a rivalry, right? Not that these false pseudo rivalries. But, one of the things that I love about it is that it's one of the only games go to in a bus, right? You get in the drive down there, and everywhere else you got to go on a plane and whatnot. And you get on that bus, and it's just like you can feel yourselves getting closer. Builds with every mile as you get further down into that. Well, I won't use any choice words for it, but I remember getting down there, and we pulled up in the bus, and there's a dormitory, or at least there was, that was right across from where we would enter the stadium. And somebody inside one of the dorm rooms had written some very choice derogatory words about Jake Plummer's mother. And I will not repeat those words here. Let's just say you couldn't get much worse. Jake did not see it, but Juan Roque did. Now, if you know Juan Roque, he'll get excited about anything, especially about playing football. And then you get him ready for that game. And then he saw that written. Well, he went in, and right before we went out for that, before we ran out onto the field, I see Juan go over and just whisper in Jake's ear. And I see this look come over Jake's face. And then we went out and we did what we did to them. It was a glorious, glorious evening. And by the way, the bus ride home, as may have been revealed in the Legends Luncheon, let's just say that there may be some beverages involved, and that was just a fantastic party for 2 hours as we drove back. Good land.
Now, obviously, you're looking back 25 years later from that magical season and that game, that huge victory over Arizona. How has the rivalry and the feel of the rivalry evolved for you, over these last 25 years?
Well, we've certainly gotten the better of them, I think. I want to go back. I was looking up some of the history behind this incredible rivalry. I mean, it's just, the fact that you have pre-turn of the century, this game happened. I really, really hope that there is some sort of spectral saloon up in the sky somewhere where I can go and find that original team of Tempe Normal and buy those guys a beer, if not many, for winning that first encounter. Because it was pretty dismal from there on out. It was like, over the next 30 years, we didn't win. I mean, the games weren't every single year. It was pretty dismal going there for a while. I think we scored like 3 points in 30 years. But, for me, then you really have to look to the sort of post-World War II era, I guess. I think it was from 1946 that the games were played every year. And we've had them from there. And so, but over the last 25 years, let me explain this. They're fans, you must know the story. So my kids went to a new school over here a couple of years ago, and we went to this, parents' night. Met some other parents, and there was this one American couple, and the guy, people, really nice people. And, you know, I'm talking to the guy and everything else. And, you know, like, okay, cool. Maybe I met a new friend. Next day, walking up to the school, and he's walking down the sidewalk. He's already dropped his kid off. He's walking down the sidewalk towards me, head to toe in U of them red, blue, and who colors. And I just looked at him. I said, "You have got to be kidding me." and he's like, "What?" And, you don't know me yet, but we're going to have some choice words for each other over the tenure of our friendship. And so some time goes by, and, you know, we're talking about things and everything else. And then finally I just asked him, I said, so what years were you there? And he's kind of got quiet. And then he said to me, he's like, "Well, actually, I never went." And I said, "I'm sorry, what?" And he goes, "Yeah, no, I never went to school there." He goes, "Actually, I grew up in Idaho, and one of the only channels that we could get was the Arizona feed for whatever network it was." And so he grew up watching U of A basketball. And yet the guy walks drops his kids off in head to toe red, blue, and who. And I said, "You are the perfect U of A fan. Congratulations." So, you know, good times.
Well, Gus, my man, we truly appreciate catching up with you, buddy. Glad to see everything going well over there for you. Thrilled that you get a pretty reasonable kickoff time here this weekend. Would that be a 10 p.m. over on your side?
Yeah. What time's kickoff? I haven't even looked.
Oh, it's 2 p.m. here.
Oh, glorious. Fantastic.
Okay, well, there you go. Good to be the bearers of good news there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, I can have an adult beverage and not feel bad about it and watch a football game, because, you know, that will be about a 10 p.m. kickoff for me. It'll be fantastic.
Excellent. Awesome. All right, my friend. Truly appreciate you. We'll definitely catch up down the road.
Likewise, great guys. Really appreciate it. Go Devils.